see why people do tier lists. This thing is easy. Hello, today I'm going to do the 7th rotation runner half of our Netrunner 7th rotation tier list. We did the corp the other day. We're going to do the runners now. As I was saying in there, I did that one largely as a reaction to a whole bunch of corp doomerism because this is a bit of a runner meta. Although the data bears out a little bit differently on that. We'll get to that because I think it's kind of interesting. This is going to be a little bit faster because I think that people largely understand what runners are doing for the most part, but I do want to stop at a couple of points that might be a little bit interesting because I think some of my positioning is not going to be reflected entirely by the data and always be running. I also had a really good comment from some fish here who noted that, like, hey, you make good use of Maker's Eye. I think going over the data from that would be a really interesting video. And I actually do use that because it's a really useful aggregate for everything in ABR. I will put a link to it for the unfamiliar in the comments for this video. And I'll go ahead and do that for the corp one as well, because I don't want people to not see those things. But I'm not just going to be looking at the data for this video, because this is also sort of speculative and vibes-based. This is a more subjective thing than just data. I would actually love to go over the data and kind of extrapolate on it, but I'm using that as a springboard for opinions here. So we'll probably look at that at some point. I think some fish here had a really good idea, but that's not what this is. This is going to be a straight up tier list. It's data driven, but not just sort of extrapolating on that. That said, the bottom of the data is absolutely the bottom of this. Yeah, it's Nova. Nova goes in don't. Nova is bad. Nova's just not a real ID. So, like, in the corp one, I specifically said that Ampere went to the bottom of Swiss cheese because when you're playing against a corp where everything's unknown, it's surprisingly annoying. It's not necessarily good, but it's kind of difficult to handle. This is not true for a runner. Nova's just a woefully inconsistent runner whose options are inherently limited by their really unfortunate text. There's not a lot of reason to dwell on Nova. If you bring Nova, you know what you did. It's very funny. You can do funny things, but it's not great. Runners only have one more in don't, as far as I'm concerned, and it's Topon. Now, I talked about this in my elevation card review. I think that Topon is largely a victim of a couple of things. The first one being Hoshiko. I think Hoshiko is just an infinitely better value ID, and that's just gonna be the way it's gonna be, unfortunately. Like, Hosh's condition is so much less of a problem than Topon's. The thing that Topon has going for them is that they can play cheap stuff very easily, but that's only really true once they get a buffer drive. And what's especially disappointing is that their console, Bling, is arguably better out of faction in Shaper, because you're less likely to hit things that really don't want to get hit. So I know you can build around it, and, like, you can make Topon adjustments and everything, but, like, the fact of the matter is I have yet to see anybody make Topon work. I have yet to make Topon work. Topon isn't showing up. People aren't putting in the reps with Topon. And I get why. I just don't think that Topon's very good. I think that if Hosh goes away, you still won't see a lot of Topon. I think you're just going to see more of everybody else. But as it stands, there's just really no reason to pick Topon in particular. However, 2 out of 19 ain't bad as far as, like, bad IDs go. Everything else is at least playable. That said, this next one's kind of going to break my heart a little bit. Our first inductee into Swiss cheese is Baz. Now, Swiss cheese is a little bit of a weird designation with runners in particular, because as a corp, when you're setting the terms of engagement and the runner doesn't know the rules, you can cheese people with a closed deck list. As a runner, that's harder to do. You're going to play things the corp doesn't expect necessarily, but you still have to make more of a meta call, and I think the corp pretty well understands when they see a particular runner faction or a runner ID that there's a general gist of what they will be doing. And no ID exemplifies that more than Baz, because Baz just exists to mess with your ice and throw boomerangs. That's essentially all that he does. He does do other things, but none of them are as important. And unfortunately, simply not rezzing your ice in a wide corp meta is a very real option that you will do all of the time. Baz is surprisingly low impact. The Baz install is surprisingly low impact. And even when he has shown up in tourneys, he has not done particularly well as a direct consequence of the popular decks right now being things that Baz is not good at. It's just sort of an unfortunate consequence of the current corp meta. This could change. Baz's effect is not terrible. He's just not especially notable at the moment. So if you pick him, it'll specifically be because you made a meta call or you went for a particular type of play that, like, is weird and catches people out, and that's why he's here. Runners are a little bit funky in the Swiss cheese front, but Baz just seems like that example. Speaking of, Padma. Now, I can talk about why Padma's not good all day. They banned the boat, yada yada. We all know that. I do think that Padma has a little bit of game into the field. I think that playing something akin to like the old girls deck with Akiko with Padma is arguably a little bit better. Mostly because you can charge a Devadatta drone and then use it with Beatriz or Eru. I think there's some neat stuff there. There's also people kind of trying to push Cacophony Padma a little bit, and I think that's kind of cool, but I don't know that it's necessarily good enough to get her outside of Swiss cheese. I think that if you see Padma, the first thing you do is make R&D suck, and then everything else kind of works from there. And the girls' pressure making the other centrals a threat is nice and all. It's not enough to really elevate Padma out of this, though. Not yet, anyway. Of the runners in this category, I think Padma might have some interesting stuff, and I think she will catch people out, but I don't see her getting out of this tier anytime soon without new charge stuff. And that would take a new set that doesn't exist yet, so here we are. Next is Dewi. This is a little bit of a heartbreaker. Dewi is a really neat runner that can apply a lot of pressure in a lot of neat ways. The problem is, I am not really convinced that Dewi works against a lot of the field. And not in the way that I initially would have thought. Like, Dewi's a difficult runner to play, and a lot of gas in your tank to kind of, like, mental tank, that is. Like, you really have to think your ass off to make a Dewi game work, and the returns you get are just kind of bad Hoshiko. And again, you know, we're comparing everything to Hosh, and we will get there, because I made it very clear how I feel about Hoshiko. The problem is, like, at the end of the day, what Dewi is doing doesn't typically convert into a win. Like, a Dewi rig is often pretty underwhelming. It is a nice bit of pressure, and when Dewi goes off, she goes off, which is cool, but I'm just not wholly convinced that Dewi is there yet. There is probably more potential here. I see, unlike Padma, who feels kind of stuck in this tier, I actually think Dewi could climb a fair bit. Some of that is going to rely on Corp's changing, kind of optimizing, and seeing where that shakes out, and then seeing where she goes from there. But in the same way that Baz stock could go up if the game goes tall, I think Dewi stock could go up if Corp's basically ice less. So she kind of goes the other way, but both of them ironically end up here as a result of just being super matchup dependent and kind of shaky and a lot of work for a minimal juice for a fair amount of squeezing. It puts you here. All right, next is... This one surprised me a little bit. It's Ryo. So the thing with Phoenix, right, is that they're a legitimately good ID, but compare kind of poorly to everyone else in her faction, to the point where I really struggle to say that you should in particular pick them, even though running with Banghar in this is like an undeniably good thing to do, right? The problem is, in the same way that Topon is like super glued to buffer drive, Ryo is not an ID until Bankhar's on the table. That said, if you're gonna be soul bonded to a card, Banghar is a much better one than Buffer Drive. So none of this is to say that Ryo is not good. And as a matter of fact, I actually thought about putting him at the top of Swiss cheese. There is one more ID above at the moment. But honestly, it's kind of fringe, right? Like, the top of Swiss cheese is like sort of top of that, bottom of viable. I don't think that Ryo is bad by any stretch of the imagination. I think they're awkward. And I think that they're so reliant on that one combo card that it really does hurt some matchups where that card is less good. So, again, I think that there's a lot of game here. I think the text is good. I think the 17 influence is good. I think this is fine. I don't think you're necessarily wrong to take this, but you're a little bit more susceptible to what the corps are than some of the other runners we're going to get to. And our last inductee was a surprise even to me, and then I looked at the data and I looked at where her decks have gone, and unfortunately it's Ahri. What a wild thing to go from winning Worlds to being really fringe, but when you lose like half of your tools in rotation, or bans, depending, yeah, that's gonna hurt a lot. Ahri has a lot less to work with now. I will tell you that Ahri's text is like undeniably good. I think that free click is great, but there is another Shaper runner who will be named in a bit that basically just makes Ari feel a lot worse right now. A lot more narrow in scope, a lot more difficult. Now, there are plays you can make with Ari that no other shaper can make, which is really, really cool. But the current Trojan pool is kind of rough, and I don't see that getting better anytime soon, nor do I think they're going to unban Trick Shot with any speed at all, considering that Shapers are, despite being the minority of the field, actually doing pretty dang well. So I don't see it. I don't think that Ari is going to have much game into the field, even though of the characters in Swiss Cheese, I look at Ari and I'm like, really, Ari? This one's a little bit more data driven than vibes based. I would have assumed that Ari was here, and then the more I looked at the results, the more I was swayed. Just like, no, it really does feel like Ari is like a very matchup kind of like, do you have a cool gimmick, and or is this a field you can play Umbrella into or something? As it stands, it seems like Ari's a little bit lost for purpose at the moment. But again, that text is just objectively good. So here we are. All right, we are in Viable. There's a lot of IDs in Viable. It's a fairly weighty chunk of the tier list. You're gonna see as we go on. At the bottom end is Essa. So in a similar sort of flip side of the coin situation to Ari, I think that Essa's thing, that being copious amounts of Sabo and core damage, is a legitimately solid game plan until you start running into the dedicated kill corps or the grindery corps like Egg or what have you, at which point things get dire. Also, Thule is not bad, and that's probably the absolute worst possible matchup for Essa. So, like, their problem right now is that the corp field is not especially welcoming, but when you are in a matchup that doesn't suck for you, you are great. Yes, Essa lost some stuff, but not that much, because most of what Essa runs came with them anyway, so it's not really a problem. I would say that Essa is tail end of this, and it's very much a meta call thing, but unlike Ari or Rio in particular, if you play Essa and you're correct to make that meta call, you're gonna do fine. Like, you're totally okay. So I think this is fringe a little bit, but, like, again, the chances of running into an Essa are never zero. And to be very real with you, if I'm playing, like, a Zvicki or a Nuving or something like that, I am kind of sweating when I run into Essa in particular. So I think I think they've got potential. It's just a little bit shaky. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Next was one that really did my heart good because I love this dude. It's Dao. I think this character is better than he's maybe ever been. Game Dragon is stonks. All the other Shaper stuff going on right now, as far as econ and everything else, just works well with him. Moving Ice around is more impactful than it's been in a while, because Ice is simultaneously, like, more cheatable, but also, like, more notable in a lot of ways. You can stack all the bad Ice elsewhere and just haul ass, whether you're doing, like, conduit digs, or you're making the remote totally unreliable, or you're doing any kind of pressure you want. Tao is surprisingly good at it. I think it's Dao. I'm not actually 100% sure on that one. I'm going to have to look that up, but it's Dao, typically, when I see it elsewhere, so I'm going to assume that's the case. Maybe I'm wrong, though. I don't think they had a pronunciation guide on the DB, so anyway. I love this dude. I think his text is awesome. I have always enjoyed playing him. He's always felt pretty fringe. He's still kind of fringe. That hasn't really changed, but I think that as of right now, while there are stronger Shapers, and we will get to them, if you want to play something a little bit more out there with a small deck size and a really fun gimmick that can just knock certain corps over, especially if they're trying to rush, Dao might be your guy. I enjoy him a lot, and I think he's done surprisingly well. Like, the data bears out that he's basically a coin flip. I suspect that, if anything, that's going to improve rather than go down. So it's pretty neat to see. This one also makes me pretty happy. It's Az. Az has borne out to just be a really good value ID, and it turns out printing open market has done wonders for him. Holy crap, this is an incredibly solid thing to be doing. The amount of money that Az can just kind of print over the course of a game is not insignificant. Like, it is really, really good. Everything else that Az is doing really hasn't changed that much, to be honest. Criminal just got a lot better, and Az's particular niche improved as a result. But open market really is just like that huge shot in the arm. Knick-Knack, though, is like the real big thing for Az. Knick-Knack synergizes with everything As ever wants to do. You should probably be running 2 or 3 copies in any given As deck, and it is a really solid econ engine, as well as a bit of a draw engine, that just keeps you moving, keeps the pressure on, keeps applying that, like, harsh pressure on the corp, building your board, deconstructing your board, always being a credit up on the things that you're selling. It's great. It's really efficient. It's also a lot of fun to play. And it's not particularly taxing on the old brain either, because we're not getting into, like, prognostic Q loop shenanigans here, where we're just remembering a million different things or making notes every time you so much as take an action. You're just doing basically a slightly easier version of an Aesop's econ. And it's fun. It's fun. It's effective. As is good. I absolutely endorse playing some As, especially with Knick-Knack. I think it's a lot of fun. People aren't really on it that much right now. I know Sokka played it for a bit, but yeah, I think it's great. I think you should play As. I think it's a good time. Next, I have Lu. So Lu is a turning point in this tier. This is where we go from, hey, these are kind of like tricky matchup dependent or sort of unproven IDs, to if you make the correct meta call, you're gonna stomp face. And if you don't make the correct meta call, you're still okay, you're just not favored. That's Lu. Lu's text is amazing when it works, and it works more often than not into the current field, so Lu is worth considering as a result. The tourney results bear out a little bit less than maybe I would want, but as wide corp continues to proliferate, I see basically no reason why Lu, chock full of gourmands, is not going to apply a ton of pressure and win games basically off the back of just, like, not letting people play their game. Any non-optimized wide corp crumples to a Lu. Basically any yellow wide corp, or to a lesser extent purple wide corp, crumples to Lu pretty hard. An optimized Ob gets there, an optimized Alco can still get there, but they don't like dealing with this guy. He's rough. So I definitely think he belongs here. I think he's better than a lot of people have sort of assumed. And I think that you're going to see a little bit more of him going forward. He hasn't been super popular as of yet, just because he's not a new ID, but give it time, and I think you'll see more of him as we go. Speaking of System Gateway, hey Xayah, it's Reg Crim. Reg Crim's good right now. You want to do all of the things that Xayah is good at, and the extra Xayah money matters more than it's mattered maybe ever. It's just reasonable to play Xayah. I think that the field is perfectly conducive to most crims that aren't doing the Baz thing, and Xayah is a perfectly viable, always good, always reasonable option, in the same way that you're probably not wrong to run Penny Shaver in any given crim deck, depending, with a couple exceptions, actually, we'll get there. Any reg crim deck, I should say. You're basically never wrong to get additional money for doing the exact thing you want to do. Reg crim with twinning still just wins games, and Xayah is a perfectly good home for that. There's other things Xayah can do too, but I'll always just associate this with like a White Blade style. This is a crim deck, it does crim things, it has singleton breakers, don't mess up, and Xayah is great. No complaints. And at the very top end of Viable, I think Muslihat's just a hair better. I think that the 10 Makor super fast run event focused crim, while a little bit more swingy in the matchups, because boy do you not really have a lot of game into Leo in particular, is really, really a strong thing to be doing. I think it's great. I think Muslihat gets work done. I think that draw is undeniably fantastic. If you get your ID hit rate to like 70% or better, you are generating so much value, it is honestly ridiculous. And if you build your deck in such a way that your non-ID compatible cards are worth putting together right away, or installing right away, rather, you still maintain your tempo really, really well, and you just keep running. Like, they can't really stop you. If you're running the Matryoshka version, you are a bit more susceptible to tripping over literally anything and basically losing on the spot. But if you're running with actual breakers, at least enough to back up the Matryoshka should you run into something Matryoshka can't handle, which is surprisingly common these days. I kinda don't see why you shouldn't be running Muslihat if you want to run Reg Crim. Xayah is also perfectly viable. I have more fun with Muslihat. I actually have an entire slide deck done about when I tested every single run event in Muslihat and what did well and what didn't. But surprise, surprise, it's basically just blue card's good, everything else kind of dubious, or mixed. And that's not the most interesting presentation. Let me know if you actually want to see that, but it wouldn't... I don't think it'll shock anybody. I have one or two sort of spicy takes, that's about it. Point being, I think that Musliat applies so much pressure that she's kind of undeniable, and I love playing her. She doesn't quite make it into this part because she is a little bit vulnerable to, like, too many dud draws or, like, a matchup that sort of kicks run events in the mouth, but she's still great, and you should play her. Same as Xayah. These two are basically interchangeable to me. Okay, it's meta time. Let's talk meta cards. And this next one's gonna surprise you because it surprised me, and the more I've played it, the more I am absolutely convinced that Mercury is going to be a problem. I love Mercury now. I loved Mercury before. Like, one of the first decks I published on the DB when I came back to the game was a Mercury deck that ran Divide and Conquer, and I was really worried going out that, like, losing Divide and Conquer and losing Aeneas Informant was going to make Mercury basically Garbo. Oh, and Inside Job as well was huge. And I was like, I don't even want to play Mercury into that. That's so much stuff to lose. And it turns out that Mercury's just kind of still incredible. Like, it's not even the new Crim cards that did it, although some of those are pretty good, like the money cards are nice. But, like, the big thing is that Mercury is just capable of getting past almost every piece of ice that's in the game right now. It's honestly kind of mind-blowing. Like, outside of the Leo matchup is terrible, which I think is really ironic and appropriate. But that BTL's a bit rough. That's about it. Like, Mercury is capable of beating pretty much everything relatively easily. That early pressure is so damn strong. You're not as poor as you were, even though you did lose Aeneas Informant, and that's a bit of a downer. And you can just go where you want to go. Melandrogem is worth every penny. You're Physaraming anything. Like, Biowalk gets walked through. It's effortless. Every single effect in this ID right now is just killer. Like, this is everything that Baz wants to do, except when they don't res, you kill them. That's amazing, y'all. It's so good. And there's a lot of ways you can go, right? Like, all of them involve Hermes, obviously. But, you know, you can go for alarm clock, you can go for backstitching, you can go for, like, heavy Devadatta drones and just play like a funky version of the girls deck, but without Beatriz because you want to be able to push HQ with Cupulation anyway. Cupulation, by the way, amazing against the wide asses because you can just snatch a hostile right off the table. Like, it's really good. It's really, really good. I think if you're going to be playing a, like, funky, aggressive deck, if you want to play like an aggro, gas kind of runner, Mercury's one of the best ones you can play. I did not see that coming, but I've been playing quite a bit of Merc. I've been playing against Merc, and I've been seeing the tourney results, and while they are a bit limited on the data front, I think you're only going to see more Mercury. If you want a fun fact right now, if you actually look at the ABR data, Mercury is the winningest runner in terms of percentage. Now, that's not a huge sample size, so don't give that a ton of credence, but keep an eye on Mercury. I think as things bear out a little bit more, you may legitimately, we're gonna see if this presents a problem or not. I don't think it's, like, ban-worthy by any stretch, but I am always automatically dubious of a meta in which I can just bypass everything, and I say this as somebody who used to play, like, same old thing, inside job, DDoS, and win tourneys with it, because people just weren't ready to, like, walk through 3 pieces of ice. I feel like I'm doing that with Merc now, and it feels gross. I love it, but it's gross. Alright. It's enough of glazing Merc. Man. Anyway. Lat. Lat's fantastic. It's Lat. It's Lat. He's the boringest Shaper ID around, and he's great. He draws card, he makes things happen. Shaper's pretty good right now. They are the minority of the field, but that is not to say that, like, Shaper isn't doing well. They're still winning tourneys. And Lat is winning. Lat wins games. Lat draw good. If anything, Lat draw actually gives you more game into kill matchups than Mag's stuff does necessarily, but Shaper is also the most resilient faction at the moment, and Lat makes that even stronger. Like, Lat is well positioned, Lat is strong, playing Lat is never wrong. There's nothing else to say. Lat's just good. What there is a fair amount to say about is Seb. I think that people expected Seb to get a bit of a glow up because all of his tools were basically, like, alongside him, as long as he got a replacement for Hot Pursuit. And he got Transfer of Wealth, so he's great. He's doing fantastic. We're happy for Seb. I think Seb is a dynamo. This dude's engine is so powerful. He is arguably capable of being, like, the richest Anarch by a mile. that's not even what makes him the strongest. What makes him the strongest is that he's capable of applying pressure and playing cards that do it that no one else can. And in certain matchups, the ice stuff, the crew stuff, all of that is game winning. Like, actual game determining against weaker corps. It just knocks them over. They fall over. And Seb pressure on HQ is so oppressive. It is honestly kind of mind-blowing. I love what they've done with it. Like, Seb, for context, I think Seb is probably my favorite Anarch. I think he's thematically incredibly cool, and I think he's mechanically fantastic. He's basically an orange criminal, and I love everything about that. So, like, I'm really glad that Seb is doing well. I think that he's also an NPE factory, and a lot of people are going to get really pissed at having to play against Seb a lot. But I would say too bad, because he went from being a total joke to being phenomenal. And we love that glow up. We love this guy. I think he's incredibly strong. I think the game he's able to play is wholly unique and very him and very strong and incredibly effective into basically all of the field. But the real kicker with him is that any corp that exists kind of in this general space, he basically gets for free. Any corp that exists in this kind of space, he has real game into. And any corp up here is basically a coin flip. And that's all you could ever ask for out of an ID. Like, Seb is just great. If you get your head around the playstyle, he's a blast to play, and he's gonna get you wins. Like, there's nothing else to say about that. We have one more for meta. I really debated putting all three of these in lmao. I can't do it. Because I think that Mag is the best shaper, but I also think she's very fair. So, Mag's whole deal is that she gets that install, right? And that is a 5-click runner. 5-click runner is absurd. It's a little less survivable than lat, but it's more powerful than lat in more cases. And the important thing with Mag is that you have full control over your own ID ability, where with lat you have to play their game, and sometimes you don't want to do that. Mag is always great, and Shaper has borne out to be difficult to play because they basically made kickflips mandatory to get anywhere, but if you're going to do it, Mag is the best way to do it. And my goodness, does she do well. Like, it is rare that you see an ID that is new and popular that stays ahead on win rate, because what ends up happening is the law of averages shakes out in such a way that they become a coin flip. And she is technically positive right now. So the fact that you had a whole bunch of people figuring out unoptimized Shaper in tourneys and they still came out ahead should tell you that Mag is great. I think that Shaper is stronger than people even realize, despite the fact that it has been winning things, and I think you're only going to see more Mag as you go. And I specifically think it's going to be Mag. I think Lat is solid, but I think it takes a certain kind of, like, a little bit of a different deck to make that work. Whether you're playing, like, Reg Shaper, or you're playing Madani, or you're doing, like, Madani control type stuff, or you're doing anything else in that vein, you'll basically never be wrong to pick Mag. Like, ever. And I think that is incredibly cool. The problem is, it does make the rest of the Shaper card pool feel, or ID pool specifically, feel a bit worse, which is a little bit of a downer. But I still think that just means that Shaper is still in a decent place. You just have to pick one of the two incredibly strong value IDs to really see the full potential. Speaking of full potential, though, we have two inductees for lmao, and as surprised as I am to say this, the top one is not Hoshiko. Hoshiko, though, is still Hoshiko. She's still the best value ID in the game. It is not particularly close. Hosh will always be a problem. Hosh will continue to be a problem. Hosh can do anything that can be done in Anarch and does it better than all of them, with the exception of specific Seb plays and Essa's entire deal. That said, you know, Hosh can still make use of Sabo, it's just not the same. Hosh is, without a doubt, so incredibly efficient that it barely matters what you're playing. Like, if you pick Hosh and you play a competent deck and you know how to play it, you're going to do fine. The fact of the matter is, Hosh is so ahead of the curve, it's kind of gross. I really don't like constantly going on about Hoshiko. I know that, like, Hosh has a lot of fans and people enjoy her and enjoy the stuff that she enables and all, but, like, come on, y'all. I get it. I get why, but she's just so incredibly strong. I don't even really know what you could do to, like, make this ID not busto. She's just too much. But And this breaks my heart because I played this ID to death in the last rotation. I played so much Sable, it was ridiculous. I love Sable. I was playing Sable at my weeklies for months straight. But I am actually convinced that the current incarnation of Sable is a problem. Deep Dive Sable is unreasonable. It has gotten to a point where it's not that the win rate is completely cracked, right? But, like, remember what I said about if an ID is popular, its win rate typically drops, right? I'm going to actually give you hard numbers here, straight from Maker's Eye, straight from Always Be Running. There have been 405 recorded Sable games that are not IDs and draws, right? A game where we actually had a determined winner. Clear winner, okay? Out of those 405 games, Sable's won 54% of them. That doesn't sound wild until you remember that this was an untested brand new field filled with players, and Sable is the most played ID. The most popular ID. That typically means, especially with a good ID, that you're going to drop right at that 50%, it's going to be a coin flip. And Sable has stayed positive despite that. That is a wild data point. I can't understand, like that doesn't sound wild, right? Like, I say that out loud, and it's like 54 is not a completely bonkers number, but it is when you consider how card games typically work. Popular things do not have positive win rates to that extent. Sable is nutso. Sable is in a spot right now where you're just a 5-click runner almost all the time, and you can play the most powerful win con in the game. And even if you're playing Reg Sable, you're still better than most things out there. I wouldn't say you're better than Hoshiko at that point, but you're in meta still. Like, if you're playing basic-ass twinning Sable, you are up here because you are just that much more efficient than the others that do the same thing. But if you're on Deep Dive Sable, you're playing the best runner in the game, and you should know that. Like, I played Deep Dive Sable to death in the last rotation. I've played less of it in this one because I've been exploring other stuff, but I'm not remotely shocked that it is the best runner deck in the format. It absolutely is. It's just kind of undeniable. I don't know how or if they even bother to fix that, to be honest. I think that there are counters to it. I think there's a lot of things you can do to ping deep dives out of hands or to stop deep dives from happening in the first place. It's not to say there isn't counterplay. I don't think it's ban-worthy yet, but it is, out of all of the things in Netrunner right now, it is the one thing that I look at and go, oh, that might not be long for this world, or long for this format. And I'm a little hurt by it just because I enjoy the play style and sort of the gameplay loop that Sable creates a lot. It's so much fun. And I think that the fact that it enables what is essentially a really cool Shaper deck is pretty dope. But at the end of the day, it's gonna kind of remain to be seen if Deep Dive Sable is healthy for Netrunner. I'm not convinced that it is or isn't yet, but the numbers bear out, the vibes bear out, the games bear out. I win with it, you win with it, we all win with it, we all lose to it. Like, it is the best runner deck right now. Sokka was right, everybody else is right. It's just a bit much. So, that's the runner tier list. Do I want to rearrange anything before we lock this thing in? I'm kind of debating scooting Essa down a notch. That might not be unreasonable, to be honest. But I'm gonna leave them there. I think that this is probably fine. I think being swingy on the matchup front does not necessarily mean you aren't viable, but you are fringe, right? So I think that's probably okay. Yeah, I'm gonna lock that in. I think this is fine. Runners are definitely ahead right now, even though the early win rates for Corp, I believe, are slightly ahead if you get rid of all the draws and buys and everything else. Corps are technically slightly ahead, but runner wins feel a lot more oppressive, and I understand everybody calling it a runner meta, and I'm inclined to agree. Right now, the good news is there's a really broad range of archetypes that are super powerful. Like, even if we ignore lmao, we've got solid Shaper decks, we've got a hyper-aggressive, essentially orange criminal, we've got a wacky woohoo bypass shenanigans aggro deck, and then all of the, like, traditional archetypes for those factions exist in Viable. You can do all sorts of stuff. And even the Swiss cheese IDs, with the arguable exception of Baz, have game. So, like, don't feel like you can't play what you want. The most important thing with a runner is that you get a lot of reps in and you're able to play against whatever corp you run into. More so than corp decks in a lot of cases, it's super important to get your runner reps in with the same deck and the same ID over and over and over again. So my hope is that people will find that this field is open enough that you can play what you love and you'll find something you enjoy, even if it's Deep Dive Sable. I promise not to judge you too much. Thanks for watching.